Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Today we have a review, and this is a review of a fragrance that I have had a chance to wear in full 5 times. So I do not own a bottle, but I feel like I know it well enough to do this full review. It's also Christmas, so I have to say, as a Raider fan, beating the Kansas City Chiefs today. I know many of you do not care about American football. However, I am so sick and tired of seeing Kelsey on commercials, Patrick Mahomes on commercials, that walrus coach they have on commercials. Beating them today in Kansas City was like the greatest Christmas gift God could give me. So, Merry Christmas, everybody. I love playing the Grinch and upsetting their Christmas. So, that's just who I am. It's just the kind of guy I am. So, let's get into this review. So, first of all, we are reviewing a fragrance from Louis Vuitton that retails for $410 for 100 mils. Now, when this came out about 5 years ago, it was $365, I believe. So prices have gone up pretty, substantially. And this is called Ombre Nomade. And you can see the Ram has himself a decant. Actually, I'm going to do a fresh spray to remind myself of that intro, as you can see. So while this settles down, which I kind of don't need a reminder, but I do like this fragrance. But if you've been following my channel, okay, you probably know what I'm going to say if you have got to know me well enough, and you know my taste. My guess is that, over the 780-something videos that I've put out in the last couple years, you know exactly what I'm going to say about this fragrance, but I feel like I have to say it anyways, because someone needs to, right? And when you go look up the reviews on this, it's just people talking endlessly about how amazing this fragrance is. And I do enjoy wearing this fragrance, but here's the lowdown on this, okay? So when you look this up, there are 4 notes listed by Louis Vuitton officially. One is oud wood, benzoin tears, incense, and raspberry. Those are the 4 notes, okay? To my nose, this is a rose oud saffron, okay? Those 3 notes are vital to the scent. There's no getting around it. If you have any experience with rose and oud, and in fact, the rose is almost like the first thing that hits my nose, and it's pretty prominent. So I'm not really understanding Louis Vuitton's shying away from putting the rose note on there, because there is definitely a rose. This is definitely a rose oud. It came out in 2018, and the nose is the in-house perfumer of Louis Vuitton, which is Jacques Cavallier. And I do like Jacques Cavallier's work, but we'll talk about kind of the pros and cons. I'll be Switzerland in this, and I'll give you the pros, I'll give you the cons. So, first of all, it opens up a little oily on the skin with that deep, heavy Middle Eastern rose, and the oud is slightly skanky, but not off-putting by any stretch of the imagination. If you have any experience with oud in any facet, outside of just the, $20 ouds here and there, if you have any kind of experience with oud, you will know exactly the type of oud fragrance that I'm talking about. It's slightly there, but it's actually a soft execution. I don't think it's off-putting at all. In fact, I wish it was dialed up more. Surprise, surprise, but I do wish the oud note was dialed up more. If you have any experience with oud, you will pick out this particular type of oud. In fact, if you have experience with Jacques Cavallier's work with other houses where he uses that oud note, you will pick out this particular oud accord, if you will, in modern niche perfumery. I'm not talking about going all the way back to M7, which he had a hand in as well in 2002, but in modern perfumery. It's very leathery, it's smoky, and it is sort of an accord, if you will. Excuse me, an oud accord. I ate way too much at Christmas dinner, and I'm paying the price right now, but I feel like it's vital to do this review, because tomorrow we have to move on to something else. The reviews never end at Channel Ram. So, I would say that LVMH wants you to assume for $410, and you should be smelling an amazing oud note for $410. But for $410, they want you to assume that you are smelling an amazing oud fragrance, right? Top of the line, like they go out to their oud tree in the backyard and, cut out the oud with the infection and distill it right there, and bam, here's your oud. And you know what? I'm not going to get into the debate, are you smelling real oud, are you smelling fake oud, because first of all, I don't want to get sued, but second of all, I'm just so skeptical about their how can I say this properly? Whenever they say that they're using real oud, one of my commenters left a comment once saying, All they have to do is take an piece of oud wood or a branch of an oud tree and stir the damn pot with it, and they could say there's oud in there. I mean, it is that lenient on what can actually be said to have real oud or not real oud. Also, the percentage of real oud in here, if they are actually using real oud, which on the level that Louis Vuitton pumps these fragrances out, and the fact that our good friend, the owner of LVMH, Bernard Jean Etienne Arnault, is one of the richest men in the world. He didn't become rich by making $5 or $10 off of a $410 fragrance. The margin on this, I would assume, is huge. Louis Vuitton is probably pocketing the majority of that $410. You know, the cost of the bottle is probably the most highest cost, is my guess. And so, is there real oud in here? I don't know. If they say there is, take them at their word. However, I'm more interested in the percentages of real oud. For example, I reviewed a fragrance from the house of Feel Oud, Russian Atom and Bortnikov collaboration, right? And it was called Oud de Grande. That fragrance had 50% of the formula Thai oud, okay? And it smelled like it, right? If you have any experience with the real ouds, if you have experience with the Bortnikovs, I just pulled this. This is Antiquity, one of my favorite Areej Dore fragrances. Beautiful note listing. If you have any experience with these type of real oud fragrances, the Ensar ouds, that kind of thing, you will smell this accord and you will think that it is a westernized oud. It's not something, it's not revolutionary. It's not something you haven't smelled before. It is sort of a $410 westernized oud in a fancy bottle, right? Especially if you've smelled some of Jacques Cavallier's other work. Like, for example, I'm going to review this. This is on the list to review. Maybe I'll push this closer to the front since now we're talking about Jacques Cavallier's work. This is called Falkar by the house of Bvlgari. This is their high-end Gemme line. And this is the only one from the line that I own, but it has that oud note, if you will. And on camera, it really doesn't come across how nice the cap is. It kind of looks cheap, and it is a little cheap. It feels a little cheap. The plastic feels cheap, but I do like the magnetic cap, and I like the little design that they've made. But, you know, the oud note in here, there is something in Jacques Cavallier's blend, whatever he is using to create these oud notes, that always reminds me of each other, constantly. There's like a link, you know, like they're tethered together. And so, are you smelling real oud? My guess is it's probably mostly an accord, but that doesn't stop me from enjoying the fragrance. That's the thing that I have to point out. So instantly I will say that it's overpriced, right? In my opinion, I don't think it's worth anywhere near $410 for 100 mils, but I do enjoy it. I enjoy this style of perfume, I must admit. It's just kind of who I am. I like these ouds. I've become more and more of an oud head. And I wore this as my Christmas Day scent, just to do this review for you guys as well. And I think it does go good as Christmas Day scent because there's the incensey quality, the smokiness, there's the sort of spicy quality that comes through as well. But I do think that they're making huge sums of money on these type of fragrances. And Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy for me, or Louis Vuitton in general, I should say, whenever I learned that they were going to create perfumes, I kind of just thought that it was just going to be like an offshoot of what Guerlain is making and what Dore is making and what Bvlgari is making and, you know, these kind of fragrance houses that LVMH owns, right? And sure enough, that's kind of exactly what you get. I really do think that there is some big similarities in the perfume style between what you get in the houses that LVMH owns and what you get in a Louis Vuitton perfume, right? And so I just think it's another outlet, for them to reach people with money is really what it feels like to me. And so this is the reason why you don't see me with a full bottle, because I don't think they give full bottles out anyways. I think if you want a bottle, you probably have to buy this, but maybe they give full bottles out for marketing. I don't know. I'd like to get on that train because there is a ton of Louis Vuitton fragrances I've never smelled. I've only done 2 reviews, I think, on this house. One was Nuit de Feu, which is up there with Ombre Nomade as my 2 favorites. The other was a Rose of the Desert or something. Something like that, but maybe in French, Le Desert Rose. I don't remember. It's in my Louis Vuitton playlist. If you go look, you'll find it. So I've only reviewed a couple. This is only the 3rd Louis Vuitton review, and they have a ton of releases already. I can't even, you know, name them I think there's like 40 or 50 releases. I can't remember exactly. But since they started putting perfumes out, which is not that long ago, I think it was only 7 or 8 years ago, in this Middle Eastern line, this was the very first one from the Middle Eastern line, Ombre Nomade, with the radioactive orange-looking juice. So yeah, I mean, that's a ton of fragrances to release. So there is a lot of Louis Vuitton perfumes I've never smelled. But getting back to this particular fragrance, what the oud ends up coming off as is, like I said, it comes off as westernized in style, but with a little bit of skank. So the oud in here almost gives off a little bit of a cheesy aspect, right? And it's almost like the softness of, have you ever had like fresh mozzarella cheese, right? You know how fresh mozzarella cheese is like really soft? The oud in here has this sort of purry soft quality to it, slightly cheesy elements, but westernized in style. So it's designed in a way where it's not supposed to really put you off. This is supposed to draw people in who have never sort of maybe experienced real oud. They've never worn the Ensars or the Bortnikovs or the Areejes or the Rising Phoenix or the Sultan Pashas. They haven't worn those, right? And so they're trying to get somebody who has a ton of money to just drop $410 without batting an eye. And there's a lot of people out there that will do that, right? So the oud gives off slight cheesy elements, but more importantly, Eugene said it, and he did a fantastic review on this 2 or 3 years ago. Excuse me. He said that there's slight furry elements to this, like the underbelly of a cat. And you know what? That is a great way to describe it, because there is something slightly furry about this. A little growl, right? Nothing too intimidating. It's not like a lion, like a full-grown lion roaring at you. It's like a kitten. A little bit of growl, a little bit of fur. You can see the sort of larger cat that it's going to grow up to. You can feel the claws sometimes. You know, even kittens can sometimes scratch you, right? If you play with them too rough or whatever. But for the most part, they're harmless. It's kitten play. You've heard the term kitten play, right? And so, you know, they have really sort of, I would say, toned it down, right? And so I would guess that this is sort of much closer to the westernized method of oud creation than something that is a hardcore heavy on the oud percentages like that Oud de Grande I mentioned earlier, right? But this is a very well-composed westernized rose oud saffron. I also get, and I think this goes hand in hand with that kind of furry quality that my friend Eugene was mentioning on his review a few years ago. I think it's a muskiness is really what gives that furriness. And even though there's only 4 notes listed, the oud, the frankincense, the raspberry, and the benzoin, I really feel like there is something extra. Maybe ambrette would be my guess. My guess would be ambrette. And the reason I say ambrette is because Jacques Cavallier has used ambrette with ouds over and over and over again. Louis Vuitton has a very expensive oud. It's like $1,500 or something. I forget how much exactly. It's crazy expensive, but it's called Pure Oud. P-U-R, Pure Oud. And in that particular release, which came out a couple years ago, which I would love to smell one day, he uses a note called ambretolide. And ambretolide is a ambrette substitute, musky ingredient. And ambrette sometimes has this slight liquorice-y, or liquor, excuse me, not licorice, but liquor-like qualities. And it also has slight leathery qualities, but I love ambrette. Ambrette is one of my favorite ingredients. It's actually a plant, but it gives off musk-like smells. And it really, I think, adds an elegance to the fragrance. And I think there's ambrette in here, or at least some type of musk substitute, whatever Jacques Cavallier is using. And if you go back to my review of Nuit de Feu, which is much more smoky, much more church incense-y, but the oud note between Nuit de Feu and Ombre Nomade and Falkar and Per Oud, from what I hear, they all really kind of are very similar in execution. And, you know, that musky ingredient is there in almost all of them. And so I think it's here as well. Even though it's not listed, I think that muskiness was added in. There's a couple notes that I think have been left out that are important to discuss. The rose is front and center, but also I think second, playing the tail gunner is really that sort of you know, muskiness that I think comes from ambrette, but it could be just some sort of general muskiness. But it plays really well into that furry underbelly, whisker-like feel, right? You know, there's something there that just adds a little bit of purr, and it works well. I think without it, the fragrance would be a little bit one-dimensional, a little bit lacking. I think it needs the rose and it needs the musk. And so my point in mentioning all this is that I think it really does smell more complex than sort of what the official note breakdown is making it seem. And I don't know why they... Well, first of all, I've never heard benzoin described as benzoin tears. I've heard of frankincense tears because when the frankincense is, harvested, they kind of come in tears. I didn't realize benzoin did that. Maybe that's just something that they wanted to add to make themselves feel sort of, you know, like the people reading it will go, ooh, benzoin tears. Or maybe that's actually a thing and I just don't know. Someone will leave a comment going, yeah, you don't know what you're talking about, man. Benzoin tears are so common. Yeah, I mean, we talk about them all the time. But it feels like Louis Vuitton is just kind of throwing out fancy words, and the people buying it are like, oh, benzoin tears. Yes, here's my credit card. Please charge it for $410 plus tax. But the benzoin does add a little bit of sort of, you know, like a thick, somewhat sweet, a little bit syrupy feel in the background. And that mixes pretty well with the rose. And if you actually go to the Louis Vuitton website, there's a pretty good write-up. It says, well, first of all, Ombre Nomade, the name, basically means nomadic shadow, is kind of what Ombre Nomade means, nomadic shadow, right? And if you go to the LV website, you'll notice that there's a bunch of pictures on there, surprise, surprise. And they're very well done pictures. So for example, you're gonna see like a bunch of frankincense like lined up like a tower. You're gonna see a big piece of oud sitting in the desert, right? With smoke swirling off of it, the clouds going overhead, the shadow from the bottle casting itself on the sand, and the oud, you know, the shadow from the real chunk of oud that I'm sure is in every bottle, you know, casting itself over the sand. And that sandy desert feel, I think, is created from saffron. And that is the third ingredient that I think that they have definitely left out. This feels like a traditional rose oud saffron. And the problem with the traditional rose oud saffron is there are a ton of them floating around out there. I mean, endless. The amount of rose oud saffrons that are out there are like as many grains as the sand picture I'm probably looking at right now from this Louis Vuitton website. Rose oud saffron abounds. And so why should I pay $410 for 100 ml of something? Yes, it does feel like the ingredients are well done. But I really feel like the saffron gives off that sort of rolling dunes in the desert, chemical-like smell, very industrial. You know, saffron has this very industrial, sometimes cleaner smell, they say, but this sandy, duney, Middle Eastern vibe, this sand-like vibe is really created by saffron. And then along with that saffron, of course, is the rose, which is almost impossible to get away from. I heard that originally this scent was supposed to be marketed towards women, and then they ended up changing it and marketing it unisex. It shows unisex on Parfumo, but if you watch some of the very early videos, I think Sebastian, who did a video like when it first came out, because of course he did, but he, I think he said this was marketed towards women. And you know what? That rose note makes perfect sense that they would try to market something like this towards women. Excuse me, I think many of the these type of fragrances are geared towards the Middle Eastern market, but I don't think they assume many Western men would want to wear something like this. Now, this is back in 2018. Now, a lot has changed since 2018, right? And so the rose in here, although it is very prominent to my nose, I really like the way that they kind of created the rose note because the rose almost makes this stand out in a way where this is not just another rose oud. The rose is rich, it's deep, it's like, the best way I can describe it is imagine like a deep, dark red fingernail polish, right? Have you ever gone with your girl like to the nail salon, you're bored out of your mind and she's picking colors out or whatever, And one of the colors you see is like the deepest, darkest, reddest, dripping, right? Like imagine like fresh fingernail polish, almost like dripping. Like a drop drips off of her nail and lands on the table or something. That bright red, dripping red color. And that dark red nail polish is kind of the color of the rose that I see when I smell this fragrance. And it's Middle Eastern in style, so it's a thick, heavy, slightly jammy, not super jammy, but slightly jammy, but just red rose. Almost like, you know, the color of the red is so deep that the rose is beginning to wither a bit. You know how when the rose petals seem like the reddest in some roses, the end of them start curling up and turning black, right? It's almost like it's so ripe. I don't know if ripe is the right word, but it is so in bloom, and that it's just kind of got to the point where it's about as red as those roses are going to be. And that's the way that this fragrance feels to me. And then on top of that dark red nail polish rose, there is a slightly tarry aspect. So, you know, if you look on the, if you go to the Louis Vuitton website and you want to see the images that I'm talking about, one of the images almost looks like a piece of like argan oil. Have you ever seen argan oil for your hair in the store? Argan oil has that thick honey, not honey in consistency, but honey in color, glow, right? This like very yellow, vibrant color. And it rolls off the piece of oud and lands on the Louis Vuitton symbol, right? And, you know, there's this tar note that doesn't seem as viscous as that honey note that just is, you know, light enough to roll down the piece of oud and fall onto the Louis Vuitton symbol. The tar note that I'm getting is much more like a birch tar. Okay, so like if you're familiar with birch tar, it can come across as having this very deep wintergreen-like smell and very papery. If you've ever seen real birch trees, the bark on them, you can almost peel it off like a piece of paper, like a piece of papyrus, right? And there is something dark, smoky, papyrusy about this scent as well. So that's sort of the journey, if you will. It goes from a slightly skanky, but not too skanky. You know, it's very well... the throttle is really pulled back, right? You know, it's like driving a Bugatti, but not really opening it up all the way because the person next to you is already gripping the seat. You're only going 100 and the person next to you is freaking out, so you just decide to scale it back. You could probably double that, but you're not going to do it because of the person next to you, right? And so that's how this fragrance feels like it's been designed. Like it feels like the throttle on the oud is very purposely pulled back. You get a little bit. They give you just the tiniest hint, you know? Like you open the Bugatti up just a touch to go from 0 to 60, but then you don't go any faster. You just kind of scale off and that's the end of it, right? That's really the way that the fragrance feels. It feels like it goes from that slightly skanky but very well composed oud, and instantly you get the rose. The rose does kind of change over time, and the other note that I have not discussed that is sort of playing in the background is this fruity raspberry, okay? And the fruity raspberry makes an appearance. I can smell it now, clear as day. What's it been? 25 minutes since I've made the spray, right? And so this fruity raspberry note, I've heard some people say this reminds them of Tuscan leather. I don't get Tuscan leather. I've heard many other comparisons. Portrait of a Lady, I don't get that at all. There probably is some patchouli in here. I wouldn't be surprised at all if there's patchouli as well. So I think the notes that are not listed in here are the birch tar, the rose, definitely, and the saffron. And so, you know, and then the patchouli. So 4 notes really are kind of my extra additions, if you will. But I don't get Portrait of a Lady at all. I don't get that rose patchouli thing at all. I get that much more from Eugene's La Douleur Exquise from the house of Les Abstraits. That's my that's my preferred Portrait of a Lady, in my opinion. I'd rather wear that than Portrait of a Lady. And someone else mentioned Rose d'Abbey by Armani, which I've never smelled. And speaking of huge amounts of releases, I was going through Armani's like exclusive line today and just looking at some of the stuff they've put out. My God, they have so many, I mean, page after page after page of release. Some of them discontinued, some of them issued, and I mean, it's just the amount of perfume these houses put out at these high-end mark is unbelievable. And it just goes to show, like, if it doesn't sell, they discontinue it, they put something else out. Because it just feels like they're just, all they need is, they don't need to sell a huge amount of bottles with the amount of markup in these perfumes. They just need some, you know, and people are buying more and more and more expensive fragrances. But the raspberry note, where I'm going with this is the raspberry note makes this fragrance take a little bit of a left turn. And the left turn that the fragrance goes to is this. This is The Moon by Julian Rasconnay. Now, these fragrances are not clones at all, but just that raspberry note, okay? So don't say I said that Ombre Nomade smells exactly like The Moon, but if you take that raspberry note in isolation, almost like a hookah, like raspberry, you know, like you're smoking molasses tobacco and you get like raspberry flavored hookah, right? That particular smoky raspberry note in Ombre Nomade reminds me very much of The Moon. Now, I think this is a better fragrance, in my opinion. I think Julian Rasconnay is very adept at making these type of Middle Eastern perfumes, but the raspberry note in particular feels like the raspberry note in The Moon. And the other thing that I should mention is the composition just really reminds me of other Jacques Cavallier compositions. If you're familiar with his work and some of the other things that he has done, like I said, I'll try to review La Gemme very soon, but you know, there is definitely some similarities in his creations, and I need to smell more of these Louis Vuittons. There's many I have not had a chance to smell yet. That Pure Oud is at the top of the list, but that's, I don't know what it is, $1,600, $1,500, something crazy like that. So let me read you the little blurb. This is what Louis Vuitton has to say about Ombre Nomade. Swirls of oud wood for a journey into the heart of the desert. As the day passes, the path of the sun creates a shimmery patterns of shadow and light on the dunes, whilst everything else seems motionless. The desert comes alive and draws the traveler into a passionate odyssey. Designed for lovers of rare essences, Ombre Nomade concentrates that sensation of infinity into one of the most mythical ingredients in perfumery, oud wood. A rebellious material, intoxicatingly beautiful, that the master perfumer Jacques Cavallier has faceted with a hint of benzoin and raspberry accents. Far away, a smoky wisp of incense floats towards the heavens. Never has oud been so mystical. The bottle is refillable. Okay, enough of that. So, you know, what I feel like I have to say here is something I've said many times on the channel, but the reality of the situation is the pricing of some of these fragrances has brought them to the brink of me having to say this. I feel like there's no way around it, because if you're going to spend $410 on this, okay, my opinion is if you're buying this for the oud experience, that you would probably be better off spending $400 on something like this, or an Ensar, or a Bortnikov, you know. And what I feel like these houses are really preying on, and I use that word very specifically, they're preying on the customer who has so much money to spend, but they don't really care enough about fragrances to go deeper than the surface. If you just go deeper than the surface, if you go deeper than surface level, you're in the issue I think that they're having is that many people who love perfume are the ones who are paying $410 for a bottle, right? And so if you go deeper than the surface, then you start questioning, why am I spending $410 on this when I can get a artisanal house where I know I'm getting bigger doses of real oud, let's say. Maybe it's not that you're getting not real oud in here. Maybe it's just you're getting bigger doses of it in here. Or you're getting different qualities, different distillations. Some of them even use real musk, which some people don't like. I absolutely love. I don't think there is a white musk or black musk or any of these sort of musk substitutes that smell anywhere near the beauty of real musk, right? And so, you know, when I'm spending this kind of money as a frag head, okay, as a frag head, and I'm somebody who definitely wants to go as deep as I can, I just would, at this point in my journey, there's no way in hell I would give Louis Vuitton $410 for this. And so that is the real issue that I have. Do I enjoy wearing it? Yes. Did I enjoy wearing it today? Yes. Would I ever give them this much money? Hell no, not anymore. Because there's so many other artisanal brands that do a rose oud, saffron, incensey thing with musk that I just blow me away. The quality of the ingredients, forget the blending. You know, the quality of the ingredients in some of these almost speaks for themselves. You know, you don't need Jacques Cavallier to blend it because it's blended in a different style. And Russian Adam talked a little bit about blending in some of my live streams. You can check it out. The way that it's blended into sandalwood and some of the Attar collection, history of Attar collection and stuff like that. So, you know, for me, this 2023 for me, it's Christmas. We're coming down to the end of the year. It's the time we all kind of look back on the year and what has been. And 2023 for me is the year really of my mind opening up to these artisanal houses. I'm just holding this Areej bottle because it's here. It could also be Ensar, Bortnikov, Sultan Pasha, whatever you want to call them, right? Any of those houses fit the bill. And so it is, especially, see, if this was $100, right? And this was $400, then it would be easy for me to make the case that, okay, this is like a starter. But some of the pricing of these niche houses, you know, Amouage is selling for $500, 410 for Louis Vuittons, Roja for $500. The Roja I reviewed yesterday is $500 for 50 mil. I guess at least you get 100 mil for 410 here, right? 50 mil for $500 was the Roja I talked about yesterday. So the pricing of perfume is getting to the point where anyone who wants to go deeper beneath the surface is going to start searching stuff like this out. And I know that Louis Vuitton and Guerlain and all these houses LVMH owns, they have their strategy. They're obviously making tons of money. But I think that they're going to hit a wall very soon. There's only so many people who are going to pay $500 for tobacco honey or whatever the hell they're selling it for, 400 or whatever it is. And you know, it's the same thing at Dior. I mean, there's only so many ouds you can do. Oud Ispahan, oud rosewood. You know, it just goes on and on and on. There's only purple oud. There's only so many ouds you can do with these type of molecules without, you know, at least when you go to the artisanal houses, you can smell, you know, Moroccan oud, Thai oud, Indonesian oud, Philippine oud, Vietnamese oud, you know, all these different types of oud, and you're getting the real thing to smell. You're getting, you know, the real deal Holyfield. They're not using norlimbinol, black oud, all these other things to create this accord on top of the couple, let's say, drops of real oud, which some people think are not even in there. I'm not saying that they're not, or they are. I'm just saying some people doubt the existence of real oud in here. And so if you had a GCMS machine and you tested it and it comes back for real oud, my guess is that you're going to get a very, very, very small percentage. Again, that's my guess, is you're going to get a very small percentage. So that's really the issue. That is the crux of the issue with some of these houses. Yes, it's well blended. Yes, I enjoy wearing it. But if I'm going to spend $400 on this type of perfume today, my money's going to Russian Adam or Bortnikov or whatever it is, right? Sultan Pasha, like I said, Ensar Oud, whatever it is. That's where my money's going. Now, the French houses still do things, I think, well in some aspects. You know, they have master perfumers who can blend. They create amazing chypres and fougères and all that stuff. And if I was going to buy a full bottle of Louis Vuitton, which I don't have any, or if I was going to buy a newer Guerlain, which I haven't bought a new Guerlain in God knows how long, or a new Dior, which, same issue, I haven't bought a new Dior and I can't even remember how long. You know, the French, even for the French houses, for me, when I'm spending my money on a Dior, you know, or a Guerlain, my Guerlain wish list are things like Cuir de Russie, Metallica, you know, Paru, yeah, oh God, I can see the name, I can see the bottle, but I can't remember the name. But these rare old Guerlains. That's what I want to spend my money on. Jeddi is another one. You know, I'd love a bottle of Jeddi. So these houses, to me, for my taste, they're in trouble. They're in trouble. I just can't imagine smelling a new Louis Vuitton release from 2023 and going, yep, here's $400. Absolutely, no doubt about it. A must buy. I can't imagine it. And I feel like that's the way that the fragrance lovers are going. Now, we may be a very small percentage of the population, but I feel like, you know, we're like the first tidal wave hitting. Bigger waves are coming. So the prices, they can't keep doing what they're doing in this arc, you know. They can't just keep incrementally rising like this. Eventually, people are going to do what I've done. Stop buying. Go to vintage, where you can still find $20 bottles of Hugo Boss #1, and, you know, that Heritage vintage EDT with the gold cap, which I showed on my Roja video yesterday, you can find for 100 to 150 bucks. You know, that's the kind of stuff that people are going to start buying. And it's driven because of what's happening here with stuff like this for $410. So anyways, I've rambled enough, but that's my thought. Like I said, I assume you guys knew exactly what I was going to say before I said it, but I feel like it had to be done. So if you have experience with the House of Louis Vuitton, Jacques Cavallier's creations, or Ombre Nomade in general, you know, do leave a comment. Let me know what you think. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Love the back and forth in the comments. Thanks everybody for being here in 2023 with me and watching and commenting. I hope everyone had a very Merry Christmas, and look forward to seeing you soon. Cheers, guys. Take care. Bye now.